Okay, now that we've built up our case study, let's now use it to unpack the operational process of executing on innovation using API marketplaces. Right, so if you've done our analytics translation series, you would have encountered the process of building this little execution team blueprint guideline in great detail. We encourage you to visit that series. Not to worry though, what you see in front of you is enough for you to fully understand what we are about to unpack. So let's carry on. Visit the analytics translation series though. We greatly encourage you to do that. You'll be glad you did. So let's take first objective of our case study and unpack it within the process of operationally executing on innovation using API marketplaces. Building this one central customer profile requires deep analysis of all the customer profiles across the value chain in their various forms, and ensuring that the new 360 profile has a balance between not being clunky with unnecessary fields, but at the same time captures everything critical to fulfill the value chain. Defining customer tiers and types will be a product management activity. As we said before, a decision would have to be made about the nature of integration, whether it's going to be fully centralized in a hub and spokes manner feeding in and out of the hub, or a handover process in a waterfall model, depending on the order in which services are required as per the customer booking. You probably have mountains of data sitting behind each field on the customer profiles of each service provider. You need the technology people to unpack the system and data implications of whatever is uncovered by the business analysis team in terms of legacy and whatever is decided by the product team in terms of the future. There's probably going to be a bit of back and forth here. You need the value chain constructors and translators to decide with the data team what profile KPIs are critical and map these data points across the system landscape of the entire value chain and decide on a strategy of how this data is going to be extracted, managed, and most importantly, updated. Right, so the next thing we need to consider is our API marketplaces. We developed this blueprint in section 2, so let's do a quick quiet recap before we dig into it. Right then, so the first step in building this integrated customer profile is an analysis of what the current context looks like in terms of the various partners involved, how they've built and used their customer profiles in the past, and what the implications are for the future model. Unpacking this process from a technology perspective means whatever processes are being automated in terms of building the new customer profile model are bespoke to the context. So whatever auto database polling algorithm or similar being built here, in a collaborative effort between the partner technology teams, will have to be housed within a new closed group marketplace for the various teams to use with a defined governance model. The bespoke nature of integrating loyalty programs across 4 different business entities with a unique combination of systems involved might mean that there isn't much in a way of highly reviewed APIs in the shared revenue marketplace. Some of the bits of input pieces of software written specifically for certain systems might already exist in a given aggregator marketplace. Furthermore, once teams have developed some of the software components that are a bit more generic to other industries that may want to vertically integrate a value chain with one customer digital identity across the value chain, they may list these components in the aggregator marketplace as a new revenue generator. They can't, however, make this decision on their own. The strategic arm of the execution engine needs to review this new potential revenue stream and see if it aligns with the overall partner strategic mandate on the whole. Assess the operational implications and potential intellectual property or any other legal risk. What does the business case look like, and who's the potential customer? You don't want to be dedicating resources to something with two potential customers. Furthermore, the commercial arm needs to get involved to see what is the best way to go about implementing this new revenue generator if it actually has legs. Is there any other potential value if the financial element doesn't make sense? Can it be used to build partnerships with intangible benefits perhaps? Offer up some of this rewards program capability to a technologically under-resourced retailer in exchange for access to their customer base, for example. We move on to the next objective. The booking process needs to be unpacked, and this is largely a business analysis function. Furthermore, the impact to the process and business architecture of each partner landscape needs to be assessed, defining the systems and data points involved in fulfilling this process. The product management team then needs to define how the various customer and service positioning elements will be structured with guidance from the corporate strategy arm. The actual enablement is then a technology discussion. Some of the strategic aspects, such as the business case and how some of the business case KPIs will be managed on the customer front, would need to be unpacked by the strategic arm sponsoring this process. Once those decisions have been made, then the implementation analysis starts. It's back to those lovely business analysts again. And then to figure out how the process and enterprise architecture is impacted across the board and what the new process landscape would have to look like with these changes. Finally, the digital enablement, what the ERP pushes out as the lowest possible margin and what the data ecosystem then renders to the customer in a predictive analytics negotiation process, which would then come back with the best price the customer accepted and with any luck at a good upend to the lowest possible margin. There will be customer value options allowable for certain customer types, tiers, price points, and loyalty points. The product team has to work this out with a bit of guidance from the strategy team. So the management of margin calculations is a standard finance process that is usually automated through ERP systems. It's quite likely that there are few options of APIs available on the shared value marketplace that either run margin calculation algorithms or synchronize pricing and margin allocation across different ERP systems. It all depends on what's been decided between the product team, the architecture team, as well as the data team, based on the system landscape across the four businesses. Customer value options largely depend on customer personas applicable to the context in question, their typical preferences, and what value drivers exist to drive whatever imperatives the business is trying to achieve as part of the customer value management process. The basic underlying foundational APIs may exist in terms of perhaps predictive algorithms that build value options from detected trends in customer preferences. Ultimately, however, whatever shape these value options take will require a bit of highly contextual factors that will require a bit of augmentation for these APIs to function in the context. So perhaps an aggregator marketplace is far much more appropriate in this case. And now for the next objective. Self-curation essentially involves customer self-service processes and sub-processes that will determine the customer journeys required to take the customer from exploring options to eventually committing to the said options and actually completing a booking. A quite involved analysis would have to be done to start from the as-is for each business entity to a potential consolidated 2B processes, facilitating the 360-degree customer experience. The incorporation of these elaborate processes needs to be designed and optimized into the endgame business architecture for the vertically integrated value chain. So that's one more major component the business architecture team needs to think about in building the endgame business architecture. The trip curation would obviously involve the use of value options and potential customer preferences in enticing the customer to actually complete a booking as a customer acquisition exercise for a new customer or a retention and loyalty building exercise for a returning customer. The responsibility of designing this blueprint in terms of the value options construction and incorporation into the curation customer journey sits with the product team as assisted by the business analysis team. The fulfillment of services across the value chain is a partner engagement and management process that would obviously involve contracts in terms of shared value in whatever form the said shared value has been agreed to be. The management of partner contractual considerations is a commercial management function. There may perhaps be other partners outside of the four vertically integrating business entities that were perhaps part of individual business entities' value chains that could potentially add value to the new integrated value chain. Determining which of these partners get to stay and what is the new shared value construct is a function of commercial management as guided by corporate strategy. The processes of integration of the various value options across the service lines sits with business architecture. It sounds easy enough, but quickly becomes quite an involved task when one begins to consider things such as incorporating pricing and repricing algorithms that run in the background as the customer plays around with the different options in the trip curation process, how that impacts the various customer journeys and internal business processes, as well as how that generated data is managed throughout the process. How products and services are positioned, the design of the customer types, tiers, and perhaps persona groups ultimately informs what the key objective of the recommendation engine needs to be in terms of the ultimate impact of the choice of recommendation would be. There's financial impact considerations such as margin allowances, revenue and profitability, as well as strategic intangibles such as brand loyalty and customer experience optimization that eventually lead back to financial imperatives. Once the model and objectives have been decided at a principle and concept level, then it filters down the implementation framework for further detailed ideation, analysis, design, and execution. All these processes are typical components of service online and digital platforms, so the APIs to implement them should be available in a shared value marketplace. If not, then they become part of an internal or closed group collaboration exercise to actually build them where components can be sourced from an aggregator marketplace. The actual recommendations are obviously determined by the context. However, the rendering and management of recommendations as a digital platform